Thank you for joining us on Business Now. I am Franco Malape. We begin from the Federal Capital Territory, where the federal government is planning to spend about 854.8 billion around pensions, gratuities, and retirees' benefit in the 2023 budget. President Muhammadu Buhari disclosed it while presenting the 2023 appropriation bill to a joint session of the National Assembly in Abuja on Friday. He disclosed that the total non-debt recurrent expenditure from January to July 2002 was 3.24. 2002 was 3.24 trillion, of which 2.87 trillion was for salaries, pensions, and overheads. Speaking on the budget, the Chief Executive Officer, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, Muda Yusuf, said the 2023 federal government budget has further amplified the troubling fiscal outlook for the economy. Expenditure continues to accelerate amid consistent weak revenue performance. And he says we have a budget of 20.51 trillion naira and revenue projection of 9.73 trillion naira. This in a deficit of 10.78 trillion naira. In all probability, it said the deficit will be much bigger by year end because of the track record of revenue performance or underperformance over the last couple of years. In the meantime, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has urged industry stakeholders in the digital economy space to leverage the many advantages of the new Web3, like artificial intelligence, blockchain, and non-fungible tokens, NFTs, to create jobs for the teeming youth in the country. Speaking at the third edition of the Nigeria Digital Economy Summit in Abuja on Monday, the Vice President implored critical stakeholders in the sector to create an ecosystem that will enable startups, thereby pulling Nigerians out of poverty. He also insisted that government agencies can further digitize their services and make them more accessible to Nigerians. And now some senators have said the National Assembly would not allow the president to end the proposed subsidy removal by the end of his tenure in June 2023. The lawmakers said discontinuing the policy in June will create a serious crisis for the new administration that will take over from Buhari. Reports had it that the president on Friday presented to the joint section of the National Assembly 20.51 trillion naira for the 2023 fiscal year, where he mentioned that fuel subsidy will be removed after the first 6 months in 2023. The 2023 to 2025 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper had proposed a 3.6 trillion naira in the 2023 budget for the fuel subsidy from January to June. The Joint Senate Committee on Finance and Economic Planning, which worked on the document, slashed the 3.6 trillion naira subsidy proposal to 1.7 trillion naira. But the Senate, the plenary rejected it. However, the House of Representatives approved the recommendations of each committee, which is 1.7 trillion naira. Some senators who spoke on the development said stopping the subsidy at the time a new administration will be taking over power could create a lot of crisis. Nigeria's insurance sector in the second quarter of this year, 2022, recorded 369.28 billion naira premium, indicating 20.1% growth compared to the performance in the same period the previous year. This was contained in the latest sector performance statistics released by the National Insurance Commission (NICOM), which indicated a 65% quarter-on-quarter performance. NICOM said the performance analysis was an insight into the market behavior of the insurance sector in the period under the review. According to the industry regulator, the performance showed that the insurance sector grew 20.1% higher than the national real gross domestic product of 3.5% during the same period. And in the meantime, experts have expressed worry that the positive projections provided by major finance institutions about Nigeria's economy may not be achievable. Speaking on iBrandTV's Business Breakfast earlier on the show, an economist, Dr. Leke Ebenezer, pointed out that the outlook provided by the Central Bank of Nigeria and other international lenders is based on unrealistic standards. According to him, Nigeria's gross domestic product, oil production, and other fiscal elements this year are lower compared to the levels last year.
a lot of issues as to persistent low oil production and the rising insecurity, and of course, inflation might likely also be elevated. Some of these predictions might not really be correct. However, they can be correct given the fact that the CBN is looking at a number and couple of intervention policies that is targeted towards reducing inflation and also ensuring that there is a massive economic growth. And of course, if you look at the GDP as at today is $440.1 billion. And of course, that is not a significant growth compared to the previous year, because as of 2021, it is $440.78 billion, and now we have $440.1 billion. That's a decrease. And if you compare that to 2020, it's about 432 $0.29 billion. So, for me, all of these projections are based on those parameters that perhaps the federal government, the CBN, and the World Bank believes that all of those things should be favorable. But, the Russia-Ukraine conflict is really affecting, food prices, diesel, and some germane important, supply that we can have as a country, and that can affect the GDP negatively beyond the prediction. Achievable, provided that the capital flow inflow are, in the right trajectory by the CBN, and of course, it is also, the forecast is based on the fact that there might be increase in the level of output of.
And now the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, Ezra Yakosak, has said Nigeria's non-oil export sector performance in the first 6 months of 2022 was $2.6 billion. He expressed the federal government's commitment to the initiative of various programs and projects to stimulate the non-oil export sector of the economy to develop it. The Chief Executive Officer, represented by the Assistant Director of the Council National Export Office, Olu Ikolajolu, spoke in Ado-Ekiti during a 2-day export hand-holding program organized by N854 for youth entrepreneurs in Ekiti State. He urged youth to increase their participation in the federal government's economic diversification agenda for sustainable and inclusive economic growth. The NEPC, he said, had initiated programs including One State, One Product, Open Export Trade House in Egypt, Nairobi, and Togo, She Trade Desk for Women in Export, and Youth Export Development Program, or geared towards facilitating export. Now, Nigeria's crude oil production has remained below par, decreasing to an average of 937,766 barrels per day in September. The Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, NUPRC, said this in its latest crude oil and condensate production data for September 2022. The production figure is 3.56%, or about 34,628 barrels per day lower compared to the August 2022 output at 972,379 in that order. He also said that the figure is also lower than the 1.8 million barrels per day production quota set by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries for Nigeria. According to NUPRC's data, with the addition of condensate, oil output plunged to a total of 1.14 million barrels per day from 1.18 million posted last month. The country's oil production has declined progressively since the beginning of this year. In January, February, March, April, and May, the country's crude oil production averaged about 1.39 million barrels per day, 1.25 million barrels, 1.24, 1.22, and 1.02 million barrels per day respectively. In June and July, oil production averaged 1.16 million barrels per day and 1.08 million barrels per day respectively. You're watching Business Now live from our studios here. Still to come, after this commercial break, Kenya, Tanzania seek to enhance trade amidst gas pipeline deal. We'll bring you details and more news after this commercial break. Please stay with us.